Hello, I'm Jack, and I'm going to introduce to you the glyph gesture system for Horizon Worlds. In Horizon, while in focus mode, the player can perform interactions like swiping and tapping. Glyph extends these interactions to more complex shapes defined by the developer. This video is going to be setting up the demo scene for this asset, which, as you can see, can detect Y, M, C, or A, and perform the appropriate animation. So the process starts with a glyph gesture creation tool. This tool can be found on my GitHub profile, which I will link below, but is also here. So it's JackNW94, and then it'll be the Horizon Worlds glyph gesture encoding repository. Now you can either clone this and open it in Unity, or you can just download it at the release. That will give you this folder, and inside this you will find the application, which is this one with a nice icon in purple. So when you open it up, you'll be greeted with this screen. Glyph has two modes, creation mode and testing mode. Let's start in creation mode and create our first glyph. Start with the Y. You can now draw your shape in this box. So let's draw our Y. Now this is alright, but it's a little bit wonky, so you can draw more samples of it to get a nice averaged shape. This just prevents the wonkiness of a single take being the template by which all other gestures are judged. So you can see as we do more versions of this, it'll become a lot smoother as we get the average. What we're seeing on screen here is a distance field of all the points to the gesture. So we know that a point down here, and I don't know if you can see the mouse, but on the left, in the middle, isn't very close to the gesture, whereas the point right at the top on the left is. And this is basically how we do the scoring. If you decide that you've messed up a shape, you can go clear samples or just delete it and create a new one with the same name. So let's do the remaining gestures. Do an M. It shouldn't take too many samples to get a nice smoothed average. I think that looks pretty symmetrical to me. That'll do, and A. Ooh, that's better. That will do. So we've got a Y, M, C, or A. Now we have all the gestures that we want. Let's move over to testing mode just to see whether we get any clashes. So what this mode will do is allow you to draw a gesture and see what the scores are for it. So on the top right of this panel, you'll see the scores for each gesture. The lowest score is a better score, like a closer match. And I think in the system currently, we normally have 0.4 as the threshold for gesture match. So we tried the Y looks good. We can try the M, get a best score for M, C, get a good score for C, and A. Perfect. Now you might find that if you do things like have a square and then have a circle, that these two both get very similar scores, and it's at this point where you might want to rethink the shapes. Then once you're happy with these, we can save gestures to the file. That's worth mentioning, there's a help button here that says a lot of this as well if you get stuck. Also, you can load in files that you export if you want to edit the gestures or make new ones. But let's start by saving. So we've got a lot of gestures here. Let's call this YMCA gestures and pretend that I didn't try to do this tutorial before. Okay, so back in Horizon, there are 2 steps to set up the system, and then we can get onto the fun stuff. So step 1, add a new text asset and drag in the gestures file that you just made, that you just exported from the tool. So ymca gestures.json. Import. Second step is in public assets, and find the glyph gesture system and pull that into your world. Now that is a setup, let's get on to the fun. So The system works on a local basis. You can see that in the scripts, gesture player is local, which means that we need to assign one to each player for whom we want the system to work on. I have here a simple pool, and all this does is when a player enters, it takes one of its children and gives it to the player. That sounds a lot worse than it really is. So say if we want 4 players, we'll have 4 of these under here, and then it'll assign one to each as they enter. Under player, we have a focuser and an animator. These things are specific to the demo scene. They might not be relevant to you, but I think we should just work through this and you can see the process. Animator just waits to see when a gesture is played, and then it animates the according animations. And a focuser gives a button that allows you to get in and out of focus. So let's hook the gesture system up to it. Add the gesture player as one of the items that gets given to each player. You can see that I might have done this before, but then you're dragging your gesture text asset you just made into the gesture data asset field on the gesture player. So now let's look at this in code. There won't be too much code, but you need some way to define what happens when a gesture gets played. So we can look at this. Let's look at this where it gets received in animator. So all you need to know about the system now is that this event exists. Gesture player.player drawn gesture broadcast. It will give you 2 things, the player and the gesture ID. It's a broadcast, so this is sent across the network for all players that do any gestures. I thought this gives the most flexibility, but typically you only want to know when your player does a gesture. So here we're just checking to see whether the player that's done the gesture is our player, because if not, we don't want to run any animations. When we know that our player has done an animation, that's the event that we're receiving, we can call animate using our gesture ID. Now this will be one of the Y, M, C, or A that we made in the creation tool. And then you can see in animate, we look at the asset ID, Y, M, C, or A, we return the corresponding animation, and then we just animate using this. So let's see this in action, and I'm hoping this will all make sense. So the focuser provides us this. This is specific to this demo. We'll go in there, and we're in focus mode now. We can draw the Y, and we can see the Y fly up. Now back in code, this is just because when we drew that Y, this got fired, and we sent off an event saying, our player performed Y. That's what came through here, just the Y. So maybe if you're doing a game, say rock, paper, scissors, and the circle is a rock, when they draw the circle, this will get fired, and the gesture ID will be rock, or whatever you set up in the creation tool. And then you can do your rock-based logic down here. And that is where the system hands off to your code in your project. I think this could be used in any situation where you think that you might normally have, say, like 10 different buttons to do 10 different actions. I think by using glyphs here instead of UI, you can make the UI look a lot cleaner and have the interaction flow a lot more smoothly. Please let me know if you use this system in your game, and thank you for listening.